Yeah, I was gonna just hang out today, but I figured it's nice to come and say hey to everybody. I know we're all sort of going through this together. Um, so feel free to jump into the chat. And wow, it's really sweet. All of y'all are already here. Would love to hear different thoughts and questions maybe on Michael. While we take this moment, I mean, top thoughts. It's like, what's a year? It's a weird moment right now. There's a part of you that feels like you get what life is going to be without a close friend and confidant and comrade, and you get to living. It's never easy, but you sort of think you've got your feet under you. Then a year passes and it starts to feel very, very, very real and fresh again. But I just want to say off the top, I really appreciate all of y'all, both Matt and I. All of the love and support that we've gotten from this community has meant a lot to us. It's not been easy by any stretch of the imagination, but boy, it would have been really hard without all of y'all. So I hope that we're able to give people that similar kind of peace that y'all give to us, because one thing that I really have taken away from this past year is just how real this stuff is. I mean, if you can talk to people and you tell them that you do, YouTube videos on politics, and, think it's interesting, maybe. Most people sort of think it's a little funny. But there's a real community here that goes beyond just, the people who are interacting with streams and videos and stuff like that, but to whole groups of folks out there who are doing a lot of incredible work trying to make the world a better place. And we always had a sense of it, but we didn't realize how deep that well goes. And I know Michael would really appreciate knowing and seeing the outpouring of love and support to how many people he's been able to touch. So it's there's going to be a lot to be said, and the MR show was really beautiful today, and tomorrow at the top of the show, Matt and I are going to sort of share some deeper thoughts to open up our show tomorrow, which will be a good one. But I can pitch that to y'all later. I don't really have much planned. I was just hoping to check in with y'all, maybe tell a couple stories. So why don't I look at the chat here so we can get that interaction going. Michael, like Keith says, he misses Michael every day, saying that they were raised religious, conservative, and they lost their faith as an adult. He helped pull me away from goons like Sam Harris. Yeah. I mean, I know he would appreciate that. I mean, he didn't take that stuff lightly at all. Maybe it's a good time to tell, when I first met Michael, it was, I didn't think much was going to come of it. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't really know who he was, other than that he sort of was, in the left politics space. I got together with him through one of my former teacher of mine, Luke Mayville, who was my professor at American University in D.C., and I had just gone up to New York City to try to see if I could, get in contact with folks, get involved a little bit more with left journalism. I'd been doing just sort of like neutral journalism before that, and I want to really get into commentary and analysis and stuff. So I get introduced to, my friend Luke introduces me to Michael via the phone, and Michael was late, but he called me back about 2 hours after he was supposed to call me. And we just started talking, and we both just started, I mentioned how a bunch of my friends were getting into this weirdo Sam Harris, and Michael said, well, I know exactly who that is. And we spent like the next 30 minutes just making fun of Sam and that kind of perspective. And, the rest really is history from that, which is one thing I wanted to remind people of Michael's. Michael was a really welcoming and kind and loving person, but man, he could come at his enemies like no one I've ever seen, in a really genuine way, not filled with like hate and malice, but a real genuine desire to break the kind of rhetorical power that some of these folks have. And that's something that struck me almost immediately. All right, I guess my volume's not good. Okay. So yeah, that's how I met. That's how I met Michael. Um, Perhaps one of the biggest footprints he had. This is from Billy Big Bricks. Perhaps the biggest footprint he left was combating new atheists. Yeah, and I don't think it's a small thing either. The thing is that those folks, they really reach out to people who are looking for answers, and not just answers, but also for a certain kind of style. People get into the new atheist because they want to be right. They want to understand the world, right? And they get met with this kind of media product that presents a bunch of people who essentially just repackage conventional American style conservative, or in Harris's case, American uh, liberal imperialism. But they do it in a kind of way that is attractive to folks who think that they're like, oh, I'm going to be the one who understands logic and history and all these kind of things. Yeah, and I think that was one thing that was really influential about Michael, was saying like, look, we can be well read, we can know history, and we can also not suffer through the kind of mundane, typical media experience. So we're going to stand up for people, and we're going to have a kind of rootedness and a sensitivity, and we're going to build politics that are not just thinking about yourself and your image, but also how to bring more and more people in, because that's the only way that we can change things. And I think that was something that was really attractive about the work that he was doing for so long, was just doing it in a very different way. I mean, no offense to, friends at like Democracy Now, but, watching Michael's shows was not like watching a Democracy Now, or hell, a lot of other channels out there. It was something that was unique. It was entertaining. I love what our friend Big Waz always has to say. I remember one of the first times he came on the show, or at least that I remember, that Michael, the Michael Brooks show, makes you laugh, but it feeds you too. It feeds you brain food. And I felt like that's what we were able to do, because, there are a lot of people who do good dunks on these kind of conservative characters out there. And that was sort of, we talked about it as like the hook to get people in and get people watching. But then, when you were going to be there, you were also going to learn about Mandela and the heroic struggle of the ANC. You're going to learn about Cuba. You were going to learn about, American populism. You were going to learn about all of these different things, all these histories that were critical, and also giving you a kind of political consciousness to move us from just watching politics, as an activity, almost as a hobby, into actually trying to channel that energy into changing things. And I think that was something that was really special about that project. Eric says, Michael was huge for me coming out of Southern Baptist conservative context. He was huge in moving me from deconstructing my past to reconstructing a compassionate socialist vision. Miss him dearly. I like that a lot. I mean, that was certainly something that we were, trying to do. And, there was a big hope to just being able to reach people, to not be sitting around and writing people off. I mean, that was one thing that Michael was getting really exhausted with towards the end of his life. And, remember, I think it's important to put things in context. It's, he didn't know these were his, his last bit of time. So I do think sometimes you can get too focused on like, oh, what was his like last message? Because, the message is the work, and it's the work at large. But, one thing that he was really upset about was this kind of closing off culture that was just, and still is sadly such a part of, the left movement, and not just like, oh, cancel culture or stuff like that, but just like really building up walls and trying to only appeal to a very specific set of people. And I don't even mean that like culturally. I mean, I do mean that culturally. I don't mean that like in kind of like people's like personal values, as much as it was like there's a kind of like left aesthetic. And I think Michael really, really couldn't stand that. And, the good thing is he was funny, and he was funny to people of a lot of different persuasions and perspectives. And that was able to draw a lot of people in. And that's the real beauty, and something that we're definitely missing. S. Selt said, Michael taught me to never fault someone for just trying to make a living. Seems obvious, but I often see liberals judging the workers of evil corporations. Yeah, I mean, exactly stuff like that. Quarter says, Michael made me realize that as a leftist, we need to reach others and write other leftists. And not write, I think you meant to say, other leftists off as not a real leftist over cursory differences between leftist factions. 100%. I mean, one of the things, he just be normal. At least was what he would say privately. Was there was a real kind of frustration that like all of these people were expending their political energy against one another to define themselves, right? As a kind of like self-fulfilling, a process of like self-fulfillment, right? Of like, okay, well now I understand who I truly am. And for him, it was always about trying to get the goods. That being said, I mean, this is not. I want to remember my friend and his legacy and its fullness, which means, and it's something that he was very good at too, is like looking at those kind of tensions and contradictions within ourselves, right? And to not create a flat narrative, because Michael was very open to folks, and he also was. Always trying to push against people who were, getting fixated on the nonsense. But he had no patience at all for the kind of middling progressive discourse, for example, the war and stuff. I mean, I had never seen him be more frustrated with any kind of group or perspective than that kind of weird moment at the beginning of the 2020 campaign where people were trying to say like, well, I can't really tell the difference between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I mean, that pissed him off. And he was pissed off about it months and months and months after it ceased to be like a relevant, direct political question. And I think it was because he said, well, we need to be wary of these folks because we are building a political culture where these people who at the end of the day, they will stab a socialist in the back, they will stab working class movements in the back. But they can get over the kind of hurdles that we put up to sort of test if people are true leftist or not, right? So it wasn't that Michael was just like, everybody come on in, right? But he was very much against the kind of stuff that is very artificial and doesn't serve any kind of purpose other than just creating kind of hierarchies or, expressing yourself politically. But when it came down to functional political questions, he took those very, very seriously. Very seriously. I mean, Mandela is probably the top, I would say, of all of his characters. I did like the Marxist Alex Jones, but I do think that Mandela was probably the most interesting because of the story around it. Was just so good. Thanks so much, Alice, for the support there. Billy, this is a really great point about, I think, I'm assuming the IDW folks, is that he could tell you why they suck in a technical sense in 30 seconds and then riff on them for 20 minutes. And that's so true and something that was so good because, people would always be like, well, why? Oh my God, well, you haven't sat down and done, a 40-minute show on all of the evils of Sam Harris. And at a certain point, you're like, why would you? I can point out a lot of stuff to the way that this person views the world from IQ, which was something that Michael was very much against, IQ testing, and go through that history. And then just get to the fun stuff instead of wasting too much of the listeners and your time, wading through all of their bullshit. I mean, you can really make the point against these people pretty clearly and quickly. And Michael was just a killer at that. The Bill Clinton impression on him is 100%. Is definitely a top. And, the thing is, Michael would always say, one thing, there's a million things to miss, but one thing I'm certainly going to miss just not having the opportunity to do more of with him were those live shows. We were able to hang out with all of y'all, in person. Because It is funny, and it's funnier now that we've been doing all this stuff at home for so long. But there was a kind of like bizarre aspect of going into the studio and knowing that a lot of folks are listening and watching, but it's just the three of us like sitting in a room for 4 hours. And then going to those live shows and actually being able to see everybody's face and interacting with folks was a really beautiful thing. But I bring that up because of Bill Clinton, because Michael was just electric at those shows, and especially in the meet and greets before. And he really, really loved having the opportunity to meet everybody and to talk to folks. But he would call it putting on his Bill Clinton, because he would just walk around the room and just walk right up to somebody and introduce himself. Matt and I are a little bit more timid. Even though folks were there to meet all of us, Matt and I were usually sitting on the corner until somebody would walk up to us. Michael was very, very active and was engaging with folks. Yeah, and he always called that his Bill Clinton, which cracked me up for a very long time. I don't know if I could ever pull off I can't do impressions, but I don't know if I could ever pull off that kind of working the room the way that Michael could when he was really at the top of his game. And that last year of his life, I felt like he was really hitting some kind of like rhetorical powers that were really inspiring to watch, because I'll talk about that in a second. But it's funny sharing memories with y'all, and it means so much. And this work was so important to him, But he was also my friend, He's somebody we'd leave and we'd go get a beer, and we'd just be a couple guys at a bar laughing and joking and messing around. And that's a side of him that I miss very much as well. But it's there's almost two people that you remember when you have relationships with somebody like that, and there's that person that you're just like in awe of, which was somebody who had all of these skills, and then somebody who was just your bud. Samantha Sider says I lost my brother at an early age, so I know the pain you're all feeling on a day like today. Much love to you all. I'm sure Michael would be proud. Thank you so much, Samantha, and I'm sorry about your loss. It's been it's been tough, but the community really means so much to all of us. Chris says much love to all of you at LR today. I really appreciate, and love to all of y'all. I mean, this is a intense time, and I miss. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read these questions as we go. Matt and I will talk a little bit more, I think, holistically about this tomorrow, but I figured taking some time today and just sort of being here would be nice. It's like, what the hell are you supposed to do on an anniversary like this? It's tough. It's tough, but it's also, figuring out what is proper and what you should be doing is never really easy. David Russell says, I love asking Michael's questions. Him and all of the TMVS crew were tactical and kind. I also know y'all feel I'm a bit of how y'all feel. I'm a bit of a wallflower myself. Yeah, I mean, he was so good. He was so good at those live shows, and I'm sorry for the folks who weren't able to make them. But boy, for all of y'all who were able to make them, I'd love to hear any memories you have about them. They were all really different in their own way, and it was so funny. I mean, I gotta say the most raucous one ever was the Los Angeles show. I mean, there were people doing psychedelics and shit in the show. There were some people were trying to pass around to Matt, myself, and Michael before the show, and I was flattered at the kindness and the generosity, but I couldn't imagine anything just more intense than the three of us just losing our minds on stage in front of all of the people in LA. The LA show was just it was something else. We all got in early and were drinking in the green room before they gave us a whole bottle of tequila. Waz got really messed up on some drinks I was making, and we were all messed up, if I'm being honest. And then the show starts, and it just was a killer show. Anna, Nando, Waz, just a stellar lineup. We were all having so much fun. And I just remember Waz after his first show, his segment, instead of going back behind the scenes, just go and sits in the front row. It was just heckling us the whole time. Um, and Michael was able to command the stage even with all of the speed bumps from his good friend Waz. I mean, that show was just something else, and then afterwards was a huge party. I mean, it was definitely one of the fonder memories. It was the LA show was just something else, but all of them were so special, really. Jacob Hendren says, "Hasta la victoria siempre." Left is best. Michael would be so proud of Left Reckoning. I do appreciate that very much. It's tough. I wish he was able to see it. Want to text him sometimes for advice from, you have that realization. Jerry Ty says, "Left is best last year when I learned Michael's passing. When I learned Michael's passing last year, it felt like losing an older brother and your favorite college professor. Rest in power, Michael." For sure. David says, "I made it to New York City, but LA was wild." Well, the New York shows were nothing to sleep at either. I mean, I don't know which one you went to because we did our first Brooklyn show. We did 2 Brooklyn shows, both of them incredible. I think the first one, we had a large set of guests. It was like Baskar, Mike Racine, Alona, T from Champagne Sharks. But I'll never forget that first Brooklyn show because at the end of it, we did a kind of Q&A session, and some person just starts screaming at the top of their lungs about 9/11. Being an inside job, just extremely, passionate. And look, I don't want to step all over that discourse, but it was very, very, funny and conspiratorial stuff. And they were really going wild. And I remember saying to Michael afterwards, it's like, I'm glad that we're still able to speak to all of these different folks, that it hasn't been, exclusive or anything like that. And Mike Racine, I think there's a recording of it. I wouldn't be able to do it justice, but Mike Racine handled the hecklers pretty well. Samantha was at the Chicago live show. The Chicago live show was so much fun. My mom was there too, which was very fun for me. That was a beautiful, beautiful show. We got in trouble. We came on stage, and like the first thing we did was just start attacking Chicago style pizza. Started attack. That was a really special one too. We got to meet so many really wonderful folks before and after the show. People I'm still able to keep in contact today with. That was something else. And I remember going after that show, Michael and I had to sort of sneak out. And we went and got tacos down the road, and just talking to him about all the things we had planned out for the next couple of years. He was very inspired, and he didn't take the platform or the opportunities for granted at all. He really wanted to use everything he had for the best. Mr. Witt said, "I cried when we lost John Prine, but losing MB was a sucker punch." I remember when John Prine died. I mean, that was such a devastating moment. We were actually doing a show, and I told Michael that he had no idea who it was, and he kept on saying John Pine. He's like, "Oh, we've lost John Pine today." Jeffrey says, "I was friends with Leo Panich and always wanted to encourage him to reach out to Michael to possibly get on TMBS, but I procrastinated. Now we've lost them both." Losing Leo was a huge loss as well, and that's a sad moment that we never were able to get that together. I mean, I had sort of flirted it a few times. I didn't know Leo, but I had been reading him for a while. Eli says, "What amazed me the most about Michael was his unapologetic moral clarity. If nothing else, he taught me not to be ashamed to call myself a socialist." Hell yeah, left his best, and really found the ability. Michael really found the ability to hold firmly on that. There was definitely a shift, just in the kind of way we were talking about politics. I'm talking about all of us in general, where people started to move towards the socialist word instead of progressive and things like that. Lorcia Solidarity from UK. I started watching Michael because I was so pleasantly surprised by his internationalism, so rare now. I then read his book about the IDW, and then that blew me away, the humor in him. Yeah, and I tell you, I wish we could have gone to the UK together. I know he was really looking forward to that. And just as a side note, I know I make fun of UK folks a lot, but it's only from a place of love. Thank you so much, Atlantis, for the chat there. Atlantis says, love the story, sending love. I really appreciate it. Michael helped give me the push I need to get involved in local organizing with the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign and Medicare for All. Would have been a different person without encountering Michael. So would all of us. But it's really beautiful to see. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it wasn't. I wanted to keep this positive and remember Michael, but there are a lot of other people who have pretty big platforms, and you don't see much encouragement to do much with things other than to have the right opinion and to be mad about the right things. And, there was a kind of personal component to TMBS. We talked about a lot of different subjects. It was mainly politics. But the idea was to try to get people to go out and to do things and to do this work, because we knew that it started with all of y'all. And, that's knowing people were showing up is really special. Anouk says, sending love your way, David. I still appreciate you for being willing to talk to me about Michael from way back then for that DSA magazine. Yeah, that was a great piece. I will always support your work in this space and listen to you every week. We'll really appreciate it, and glad to know that you're listening. I'm trying to look at to read some of these comments for y'all. Yeah, someone brought up the things that are toughest to bear. The thought of Mike having missed them. While Otter says victory is certainly up there, seeing Lula absolutely flame Bolsonaro next year will be. I mean, that will be a really special moment. And this is another example. I mean, you realize how deep of an impact he was able to make. I mean, the fact that so many folks on the Anglo left, and particularly the U.S. left, know about Lula and fight for him and stand up for him and advocate for Lula. That starts with Michael. I mean, I don't want to give him all the credit for it, but I gotta say that's probably the vast majority of it. I mean, privately too. That's the thing is like, there's the public show and there's all of these things, but Michael was had a relationship with so many people. He's constantly texting folks, reaching out to people, and advocating for things. And I know congressionally, like when they put out that letter about Lula's imprisonment, when the Democrats got together and put that out, Michael was extremely influential in trying to talk to folks. And it wasn't just like, he had contacts, with the higher ups. People listened to the show who were congressional staffers who then reached out to Michael. Then Michael started talking to them. Okay, let's put pressure on this person. Let's put pressure on this person. I mean, he was doing all of these really amazing things behind the scenes too, that some folks just might not be aware of. And yeah, the fight for Lula was something that was a lot of hard work for Michael, a lot of focus on it. Let me see. McKenna says, thanks for doing this, David. Still on the clock, but want to hop in and share thinking of Michael today, as I do often, and everyone who cared about him. Yeah, Chicago does have awesome tacos. What inspired us to start doing the live shows, and how much of that format was like doing live talk show? Because I know he wanted y'all to take over Bill Maher's show. He totally could have. I would have loved for Michael to have gotten a late night show. I think he absolutely would have killed it. And honestly, I don't put anything past him. I mean, where he was going was definitely on the up and up, and just really like 2019 to 2020, the growth of the show, the clarity of what our project was. I really don't find anything to be out of reach for him with that. It was extremely, extremely there's incredible amounts of momentum there. The live shows were fun. I mean, we didn't come up with it, but they were. Once we did our first one, we wanted to do as many as we could, and that's the real damn shame about COVID. I mean, we were going to come here to Austin. I was so looking forward to taking Michael around my hometown. I don't think he'd ever even been to the South, let alone Texas. And he was very fixated on the idea that he was going to get some boots and a hat, and that he was going to look handsome in it. And looking back on it now, I'm sad I never got those photographs. I think he would have. I think he would have pulled it off too. Abby Martin was going to be with us here in Austin, Texas. Her and Anna. That was the plan. It never happened. It's a real shame. A real shame. David says, I would have loved if he got a chance to come to Jamaica. That would be interesting. I would have loved it too. I mean, we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that, but we were always saying, put that together. We will very happily be there. Tom Punk said, he was the reason I learned to stop caring about online BS and focus on what matters most. Michael made me a better leftist. I miss him every day. Yeah, he was really good at putting things in perspective. I mean, I wasn't too online before I met him, but he was helpful and helping me start thinking more constructively about things and not so much about labels, because I definitely was thinking about that for a while. What's nice is how influential he still is. Going viral after his death brought in tons more people. It's very true. And Scott Fleckenstein, thank you so much for the support. It does mean a lot to all of us. The abstract core philosophy. Michael mentioned me on his last live stream, and I think of him every day and how I can live up to his legacy. We need to build a big left. Very, very much agree. Michael was such a force. I don't know where he found the energy. Miss him every single day. Thank y'all. He had a lot of energy, but he was tired. He was really tired. He was working really hard. It's not worth thinking about this stuff too much, but it does make me sad to think that, the last messages I was sending him were saying like let's take a vacation. Like, this is, you're working really, really hard right now. We've done a lot. This is a weird time. Let's take 2 weeks off and just, go for a drive somewhere. Just get out. We can take the time. We have the ability. We don't always have to be on this mode. And, he never was able to do that. He was ready for it. We were talking about in August, let's just take a whole month off. Sort of, yeah. Let me go down. Yeah, he was an archetype of a cosmopolitan American perspective. I can't think of enough. I agree. So I agree very much with that. He was very good. And thank you, Ted. Still, I do. I'm pretty good these days. We'd love to come to Nebraska. Yeah, I mean, I think it was tough. I mean, we all know what it was like in the harshness of the lockdowns. It was not an easy time, and it was easy to throw yourself into work and projects, and the delineation between home and work too became a little bit blurred. Yeah, I mean, it was it was so funny. We were talking about all this other stuff too. I mean, man, the stuff we had planned for 2021 for TMBS was massive. We were very much hoping to take everything on the road, sort of like semi-permanently, and just constantly going from place to place across the U.S. and country to country. So much so that I was, that weekend I was looking up, Spanish tutors because I wanted to rekindle my my Spanish abilities, because we had a lot of plans to spend time throughout the Americas, and across the U.S. too. And I wish we were able to do it. I know he was really really wanting to get back to Costa Rica and do all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm going to talk. Matt and I are going to talk for a bit tomorrow. I'm trying to think of some funny stuff, maybe. Michael was one thing that was really funny about Michael was going out with him was he drank, but he didn't drink much, and he wasn't a lightweight or anything, but it was always funny whenever we'd go out. Uh, he would just copy what you're drinking, um, you know, which is just was a funny thing that I noticed, and I started becoming very self conscious about it, because I would have to think in my head, like when I went up to the bartender or something like that. Okay, what am I ordering, and would it be something that Michael is going to be able to drink or will enjoy, right? Because I know that whatever I get, Michael's be like, oh yeah, give me the same thing. Um, and the thing too is that one thing about Michael that was really beautiful too was his youth. Um, I have no idea what this is. I'm drinking peanut punch. Looks like that, David. um, a TMBS show in Cuba, special guest Raul Castro. We would have loved to do that. Um, yeah, I mean, you had to. I mean, he wasn't fussy or anything like that, but I was like, okay, don't get anything weird or anything too high alcohol or anything like that. Um, and on that same like line is like the funny thing about Michael is he was extremely, extremely youthful. But he was a bit older than us. Almost a decade older than me, and I think that was a funny aspect because a lot of people the audience, especially of TMBS, is all over age and gender and geography, but we do have a younger audience that sort of switched on online, and Michael just did not understand any of that stuff. I mean, a big part of my job was just helping him figure out how to do Google Doc stuff sometimes, and trying to explain even just like kind of more absurd like internet humor to him was something that always gave me a lot of joy. I mean, I'm just thinking of some behind the scenes thing that people might not have caught, is that there was, even for somebody who made a career basically doing online alternative media, he really wasn't of it in that sense. um, yeah. Yeah, I remember someone telling how this is a Matt story. But Mike says, I remember someone telling how Michael didn't know how to drink scotch or whatever, and just poured in like a pint full glass of it for himself. But it wasn't. I don't think Matt should tell the story, but I wasn't there. But it wasn't for himself. It was for everybody else. So it was one of those things where it's like, oh, why don't you grab everybody, drinks it? He just pours everyone these massive amounts of scotch, which is pretty funny. Um, Man, I'm sorry. It makes me sad. It's like some of these stories are too far out to remember all the details. I'm remembering some funny order mishaps, but um, Val says used to be in a deep pit of OCD fueled Catholic anxiety. Michael taught me that people are more important than abstract ideas. Immensely grateful. Thanks, Val. Thanks for sharing. I mean, um, that's nice to hear. Jay says Michael's most remarkable gift, in my view, was his native ability to make anyone and everyone feel valued in their interaction with him, and he kept to working to enhance that empathetic ability. Absolutely, I remember every day I'd come into the studio, he'd open the door, because it took a while to get me a key to it, but that's neither here nor there. He'd open the door, and he'd always be like, "How are you?" And, people say that, what's up, right? But he really meant it. Like, how are you? And he was going to catch it if something was going on, if a family member was sick or he had some kind of issues, he was going to get out of you, plus positive things too. Lucas, this is a nice one. I started watching TMBS before the Majority Report. I found you guys because I was looking for someone to explain the alt-right better after I'd lost some friends back home to being red-pilled. Yeah, I mean, this is really nice to hear. I mean, that was such a hopeful, that was a goal of what we were trying to do. Before the cause, yearly celebrate the day Michael Brooks left his body. Spiritual people celebrate the day as Bandara experiencing the abundance of the life being remembered. Yeah, I mean, that's how I'm trying to go about it too, is bringing along with it the joy. William, I wish I had this. Are there any lines of Michael's Marxist Hank Hill impression you can remember? It's like, it's time to get down in the streets. We're going to go and we're going to stand up and we're going to get Comrade Bernie Sanders into the White House. We're going right now. Right? It's not as good as him. But yeah, I wish I knew the episodes they were from. But the thing is, like, he was doing these damn things, like before the show. Like, this isn't just like stuff he was doing for the cameras. He was always cracking you up with his impressions. Oh, and Eric says, I wonder if there are any impressions jokes that were too much for the air. Yes. Pretty much the entire prep, like the 30 minutes before we went on, it was just all sorts of stuff that was not okay for air. Just get all the energy out. He'd be very proud of Matt as well. He absolutely was. He loved Matt very much. I'm so happy I got to meet Michael in Queens and got to see the live shows in Philly and Brooklyn. I hope to see a show with David in Austin at some point. I would love to have you. The Philly show was a sweet moment too. I mean, that was hilarious. That was a funny show because there was a lot of like very hardcore Crystal Ball fans in the audience who were very mad at me for not wearing a suit or anything like that. I'm disrespecting Crystal Ball. That was a really fun show. Otherwise, though, that was something else. Philly, I mean, that was really when we were in our own sense of things. We had that incredible video of the Lula Livre video. I think that we ended up sending to Lula later, which was a really incredible moment as well. Michael transformed me as a socialist. I used to be a Dorite, which affected those around me, and I'm ashamed. His compassionate, cosmopolitan view have had an almost indescribable impact on me. I'm really, really, really happy to hear that. I remember, I'm trying to read this. I remember seeing Michael live streaming from his phone at a Bernie rally. Oh, geez. Yeah, I mean, he was out. Well, that's the damn. I did a Marxist Alec Jones instead of the Marxist Hank Hill. I'm sorry, I just realized I just put those two and two together. I can't do Hank Hill. I can only do an Alex Jones. Bryce says, I first saw Michael in 2016. His humor and dedication to an international vision kept me sane and will inspire me forever. Following everyone in his sphere has been a gift. If you're ever in Tucson, I can recommend fantastic tacos. I would love to do that. Daniel, the live shows I believe they have on the TMVS channel. Matt and I aren't a part of that anymore, so we don't have control over those things. So I don't know if they're up, but I think they are. You'd have to YouTube them, YouTube search them. Hey David, sorry if this is off topic, but since you began working with Michael, have you been doing political content and work for the left full time? I mean, more or less. Early on, I was doing other jobs, and I still do stuff time to time, grunt labor to make ends meet. But this is pretty much my main project now. Yeah. Yeah, David says, I remember a few jokes that he did off air when I went to New York City with the crew. Y'all cracked me up. Yeah. I'm happy some people were witness to them because they really were something else. Nothing hateful or anything like that, y'all. Just, you know, a different flavor of things. Um, Hank Hill explaining Piketty's elephant curve would be funny. I like that. Um, do you happen to know how Michael knew so much about the Nation of Islam for the Obama impression? Well, I mean, Michael was always a big fan of, Malcolm X, and I think that sort of led him into other intellectual streams. Uh, I mean, he was just a curious guy, so he learned a lot about that. I'm sure he found, to be interesting. Um, Michael really brought me into socialism and with welcoming and open arms. It wasn't about being the most radical; it was about ending suffering and just working for a better world for all of us. Exactly. Um, Akito, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Mike pulled me in with his vast knowledge of Africa and the Caribbean and hip hop and reggae. Never seen anyone with that diversity of interests in this space. His voice is very much missed. Um, so that was, yeah, he had a lot of different interests out there. Um, yeah, I mean, we'll talk tomorrow, y'all, for our Wednesday show. Just look out for each other, your friends and family. I'm thinking a lot about, Michael's long-term partner, who is an absolute sweetheart, and she's a very private person. She was private while while Michael was alive. Um, but just thinking about her because she hasn't gotten the kind of outpouring of, material support and public support that other people have, but she very much deserves it too, and deserves to be thought of. So when you're thinking about the people really close to Michael, remember that he was living with someone he'd been living with for years and years and years, who he loved very, very dearly and loved him and was there for him all the way. Um, Take care, everybody. I will see you tomorrow at 7 Central.